Hi everyone, I'm back, and today I'm going to be talking about some book recommendations that I have. These are mostly books that I've read recently, and I threw in like a couple of my favorites just in general because I like to know what people are reading. I'm a fairly avid reader, I would say. I do have like some ADD that kind of makes it hard to read sometimes, so there are periods of time where I just cannot read no matter how much I want to. But I'd say that mostly I do manage to read at least a little bit every day. It might only be a page or two. Some days it might be 200 or 300 pages. It really just depends. But either way, I love books, and I'm here to tell you about some that I recommend, and then one I think that I personally didn't like, couldn't get through, but you might enjoy, so I will still mention it. Stay tuned. I will try to kind of give trigger warnings. It's kind of hard because like people are triggered by a lot of different things, so I will kind of just mention the ones that I think are the most distressing. I'm gonna start with the book that I could not finish. I think I got to about 80% and I just couldn't, and that is The Troop by Nick Cutter. Also, I have a list, so if you see me looking down, that's why. The Troop by Nick Cutter, which started off really interesting to me. I really liked it. Like, I read the first half of the book, like, I think in like a day and a half or so. And I was super into it. I even told my friend, like, hey, you have to read this. And oddly enough, we were reading it at the same time anyway, just out of luck, I guess. She ended up really liking it. Again, trigger warning, I couldn't get past the animal abuse in it. That was very upsetting to me. I didn't like how graphically it was described. It's just not something that I'm like super comfortable reading. So anyway, The Troop by Nick Cutter, check it out. It's about a Boy Scout troop who go on a little excursion to an island, and a lot of like really gross, crazy things end up happening there. It might be your thing, so yeah. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean people don't. Like I said, my friend ended up really liking it, I believe, and a lot of other people did too. And since we're in the horror genre already, I guess I will just talk about my horror recommendations first. Also, I am in a horror group on Facebook. I will, if I remember, I will link that below. I suggest checking it out if you are into some kind of extreme horror. There are some very interesting books, and a lot of the authors are also in that group, so check that out if that's your thing. I feel like I've been looking at myself instead of looking at you guys. Sorry about that. I'm not like, it's a weird day. Anyway, horror recommendations. First up, I absolutely have to mention these two books. They're two of my favorite horror books just in general, like I've ever read, and they are Anathema and The Exorcist's House by Nick Roberts. Again, that group that I mentioned, he is in that group. He is very active in the group. He seems like a super funny guy. His books are so good, very creepy. The Exorcist's House is about exactly what it sounds like. A family moves into the house of an old exorcist and creepy things start happening. Anathema is, I believe, the prequel to The Exorcist's House. I read them the other way around for some reason, but I believe it's the prequel, or it makes more sense if you read that first. And it's just, I can't say much without giving it away, so I will just say if you're going to read The Exorcist's House, read Anathema first. Trigger warnings for The Exorcist's House. I don't really think I have any that I can think of. It didn't trigger me in any way. Anathema, I would say maybe like slight animal abuse and drug abuse and things like that. But otherwise, they're great books. I definitely recommend checking them out. The next book that I have written down on my little magical list here is The Night Parade by Ronald. Again, I believe he is also in that Facebook group, maybe? He's mentioned a lot, if not. But The Night Parade is about a father who, like, basically there's some crazy pandemic, and I read this during the pandemic, so it was extra creepy, but, like, active pandemic, I guess. Anyway, whatever. A father who is basically doing anything he can to save his daughter after a lot of like really sad, awful things happen, and trying to keep himself alive to protect her. And it's a horror, it's very creepy, but I would also say it has like a sci-fi element to it as well. So sci-fi, isn't really my thing, but I think that it kind of worked in this book. So if you like sci-fi and you like horror, this might be for you. Ooh, I don't know why I looked so angry. The next one is a series that I absolutely love. It is 4 books. It is the Black Winter series by Darcy Coates. I really, really loved those books. Again, I feel like they're very atmospheric, and I don't even know how to describe what they're about. It's basically there's like kind of, I'm gonna call it a plague, but it's not a traditional plague, has hit humanity, and this woman finds herself in a mansion with this mysterious man, and she's not sure if she can trust him or if like he has kidnapped her. She doesn't really remember. And it's basically about their journey through this plague together. Maybe slightly enemies to lovers kind of thing, maybe, but it's a very good series. There are 4 books in that series. Again, Darcy Coates. I can't think of any trigger warnings or anything, but check it out if I got cut off, because it wouldn't be me if I didn't get cut off. Like, I like to record this in clips, so anyway, whatever, it doesn't even matter. Again, if you haven't read any of Darcy Coates' books, I definitely suggest checking them out as like an intro into horror. It's very like mellow horror, I would say. It's not extreme in any stretch of the imagination. So if you're trying to get into the horror genre but don't want to just like dive into the deep end with like the extreme stuff that I've seen, definitely check out Darcy Coates. I think she's probably teenager friendly. I wouldn't let kids read her necessarily, but I think teenagers could easily read her and not be too disturbed. Next up, we have, this is one of the most recent books that I've read. It is Dracula by Dacre Stoker and J.D. Barker. And Dacre Stoker is actually a descendant of Bram Stoker. I believe he's like great nephew or something like that. Don't quote me on that part of it, but he is a descendant of Bram Stoker, which I thought was really cool. And I found, now I will say that I wouldn't consider Dracula a true horror. I'm only including it in this genre because it's about vampires, and vampires don't really fit in anywhere else. But I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a scary book. It's just a very good read. It's well written. It takes place in Ireland. Like, I love learning about the little things they mentioned about that in there. No real trigger warnings at all. It's a good read. I enjoyed it, and I followed it up immediately with my next recommendation, which is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I had never read it before. I actually had never seen even the movie, so. Which I guess it's kind of weird that I'd never seen or read Dracula. Like, I don't know why I put it off. I thought I would like it, but I just kind of never got around to it. The writing style, I feel like, of Dracula felt a little intimidating to me for some reason, but I listened to it on Audible, so I didn't technically read it, but I listened to it on Audible and I really, really liked it. Again, not true horror, I wouldn't say, especially in today's world. Probably when it was written, it was pretty scary, but I wouldn't consider it true horror. But again, vampires, where else do you put them? You can't put vampires in pretty much any other category, right? So, well, although Twilight, anyway. Oh, and I want to add in about Dracula, at the end of the book, there is a lot of really interesting information, in my opinion. I like learning about history, about Bram Stoker and how he introduced Dracula to the world. I found that very fascinating, and I love that the authors included that. So, again, check out Dracula and Dracula by the former by Dacre Stoker and J.D. Barker, and then Dracula, obviously, by Bram Stoker. Now we are going to genre jump to fantasy, which is actually my favorite genre of books. I like horror, but fantasy is just where my heart is. So the first series that I have written down is Of Candlelight and Shadows, and there are 3 books in that series. It is by Sylvia Mercedes. I read that one just like last month, I believe. It's about a girl, she's like around 20. Her and her sister are very poor, living with their abusive father, so there's your trigger warning, some like familial abuse. And she's a seamstress, and there's like one night of the year where you are meant to stay inside because whatever it is that separates the Fae world from the human world is very thin, and the Fae can enter the human world. Like, a treaty allows them to do that. And she gets taken and is held captive, kind of. It's an enemies to lovers, of course, but it's really interesting. The third book in that series is actually my favorite, but the first two were really interesting. It's definitely a different take, I would say, on the Fae. I've never read anything like that, and I've read a lot of books about the Fae. So check them out if you want a new spin on magic, I guess. I think it's worth it. Next up, we have A Conspiracy of Magic. There are 2 books in that series. I think it's Raven's Song and then Raven's Spell, or reversed. I can't really remember, and I didn't write it down for some reason. But that is by Luann G. Smith. It is about 2 sisters and their sort of hidden magical abilities. They know about them, but the rest of the world isn't supposed to know, and kind of the drama and heartache that comes with having these abilities. Definitely a good read. I believe it also takes place in Ireland, maybe somewhere over there, I believe. Again, a great book, or great books. I think there are only 2 right now, and I don't know if that's the end, but worth the read. And then, of course, I have to mention this series. I've not read it recently. I finished it a while ago, but A Court of Thorns and Roses. That one's definitely not kid-friendly. Or, I mean, you know, do you? It's pretty smutty, I would say, so read at your own discretion. As there are 5 books in that series. The first one is my least favorite. That one was kind of hard for me to get through, but after I read the first one, I got into the second one. I really couldn't put it down. I really, really liked it. Enemies to lovers, and then lovers to enemies, and then enemies to lovers, you know. Again, Fae, kingdoms, and all of that stuff, magic, just really, really interesting story in my opinion. I know it's not everyone's favorite, but I really, really liked it because I'm a sucker for love, and I am basically in love with Rhysand, so that's pretty much it, and that's by Sarah J. Maas, so check those books out if that sounds like something you'd like. We only have a little bit left. The last fantasy recommendation I have for now is the Serpent and Dove series, which there are 3 books. That is by Shelby Mahurin. I'm not sure how to say their last name, but again, it's got a little bit of a religious overtone, but it's not a traditional religious overtone, if that makes sense. They're kind of fighting against these archaic beliefs in the book. A little bit of magic, some witchery, things like that. Enemies to lovers. Again, obviously I have a preference, okay? But I think it's a very interesting series. I really enjoyed reading it. Again, it's been a while since I finished it, but I think it's still worth reading. And it has big, strong men and crazy, wild, pretty girls. So what more could you want in a book? I mean, all right, we've pretty much reached the end. So next I'm just going to talk about what I'm currently reading, which is a horror book. It is Forsaken by Andrew Vanway. I think I'm just about 60% done with it, and I'm liking it so far. It's a little bit of, I don't know if it's a slow read necessarily, like slow burn kind of thing, but I feel like it's also not super fast paced. So like I'm again about 60% done, and I'm not 100% sure what's going on. So that may not be everybody's thing, but I'm enjoying it so far. I kind of thought it was going to be something that it's not, and I'm not disappointed at this point. We'll see once I finish it how I feel, but yeah, currently Andrew Vanway, Forsaken. Definitely has some creepy spots so far. Alright, this is the last little thing I have to talk about. The next book that I'm going to read is Welcome to Nightmare Island by Devin Cabrera. I've read a lot of good things about that book on the Books of Horror Facebook page. Again, I will try to remember to link that below. It's a very interesting group. It's got some very like fun people in it, and it's very, very, very active. So if you're looking for a group about horror books that actually posts super regularly and a lot of member involvement, definitely check it out. But yeah, I'm kind of stuck in horror right now. I don't know why, but eventually I will dance back into the Fae Kingdoms and find my home amongst the Fae. Anyway, guys, that's it. So, of course, I get cut off at the end. I am going to go because I have a lot of things I have to do today. I'm playing with a pen, so if you see me fidgeting, I'm always fidgeting. I hope you guys have a great weekend, or whenever you're watching this. I hope you have a great day. I hope you take care of yourself and take care of others. Be kind. Compliment yourself. at least once in a while, even if it's awkward. I'm incredibly awkward, and yet here I am making YouTube videos, so